today we were chatting with Marc from Leek, who started Totally Locally Leek, and you were there. And obviously, if you know anything about Totally Locally, Marc worked for quite a long time with me on just not on the national campaign as well, and that was through just meeting, wasn't it, Marc? So we met when I think you rang me, did you? Something, and then in 2011, is that right?
2011, 10 years. Yeah. I found you in Leek High Street munching on a pie.
That was right.
Probably a pork pie.
Well, so going back from that, you'd seen Totally Locally and gone, we like that in Leek. So you contacted me, and I thought, well, I fancy a day out. And this is when I had a bit more time in my life. So I drove over, and then I remember having a wander around and getting a Cornish pasty, and then you just went, "Are you Chris?" And I sort of
you sort of stood out like a sore thumb somehow.
Yeah, yeah, that's the story of my life, really. But and it was so I'd arranged to go down and have a chat with you, didn't I? Really, and you and I think we met at the Cock Inn, wasn't it? And with Alan and.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to remember. I mean, I remember being aware of Totally Locally because the shop that we ran at the time had a marketing company, and they shared an office with you in Halifax. So that was Cheryl and I've got her name, but we were doing a lot proactively with our shop, and there was very much I saw potential for Leek, so we were like, oh, what could we do that would just give Leek a little bit of something as a pick me up, bit of a boost? And they said, oh, have you seen this Totally Locally? And as soon as I saw it, I knew it was something really good, but I thought, we can't just go nick it. So I just stalked the website for a few months, and then one day a little banner or a sticker appeared saying, if you want it for your town, it's free, give us a ring. That's what we did.
Yeah, back when we used to ring rather than email.
Yeah.
Or message.
But yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing for me for Leek, I mean, my background was working with bigger corporate companies and doing sales and marketing and stuff. So opening a shop, I was looking at the shop in the same way, but also you could see the potential of a town. It's edge of the Peak District. It's a traditional market town. You could sense something was in the air, but it just wasn't quite capitalized on. But it wasn't the whole thing of, it needs to attract tourists. It was, I think what resonated with Totally Locally was this was about talking about the strengths of the town to the people who live there, the residents, so that they just realised and appreciated what they got. And one of the first people that really sort of awoke that in me was Bud Abbott. Yeah. Sadly, he's passed away, but Bud he would meet and talk to anybody who visited the town, and he was really passionate about it, and he knew a lot of the history, but he just loved it, and it was infectious. And I think that's part of what sort of awoke it in me. I've been as guilty as probably anyone else who lived there, thinking, oh, well, there's nothing special here, it's just where you live. Like probably a lot of people feel the same way. So I think from that point, it really sort of had a bit of infection. So I was looking for ways to make Leek better. And that's where Totally Locally came from. And we did the I Love Leek bags and badges first. That was a simple kind of thing. And people were buying bags and badges, just the New York style thing.
Yeah.
And I think it was a gradual thing that just awoke a little bit of pride in people.
Yeah.
I am proud of where I live and I do want it to be better.
I mean, having met Bud on numerous occasions, he was one of, like you say, it often takes one person to awaken that in you, doesn't it? And he's like probably the most stylish person I've ever met. And he was in his
for a
70s,
70-year-old.
Yeah.
Wore trainers and hoodies and combats.
Who's coolest? But just then, yeah. And he and again, like you say, being introduced to people like him gives a sense of what a place could have. And if I suppose if you bottle that, which is what I suppose this is what we were doing here is bottling that you're allowed to be proud of where you live. And that was my intention of this, because I suppose I feel that most people do actually like where they live, but they like to complain about it. But when you turn you're allowed to be proud of it, you know. They go, oh, all right then, I am.
Well, I mean, one of the things that stands out was someone who had one of these I Love Leek bags, and they were in the shop, and they said, you know, you never would have caught me with one of these on my shoulder 6 months ago.
Mm.
But it's those subtle things that sort of, like you say, you give people permission,
Yeah,
and it engages them, and then you're not you're part of a group, you're part of a tribe, you're not on the outside saying, oh, don't talk about that because I'll get laughed at.
yeah.
And then, you know, fast forward 10 years, especially on social media, if people are complaining about stuff, you see someone go, well, just move if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Simple solution.
There's a real, I think, so the fascinating thing for me was, I mean, I've used this story quite a few times, but like, you know, when you sort of contacted, it was, I nearly used the word reach out then. That was terrible.
But an onboarded.
Yeah. When you first contacted, you said, look, it's known as Bleak Leek. And because you're in that area, aren't you, of Buxton, Ashbourne, and you were seen as like the poor relation in a way, and
Yeah.
and now they turn to you to Leek and say, how can we do what you've done, don't they? And that's really interesting.
Mm.
And I think it's the classic case of top down versus bottom up. And you know, you guys did bottom up. You basically gathered like-minded people together and created a voice, I suppose, didn't it? And you created a different voice. So the dissenters have, oh, it's crap, and then you go, actually, no, it's not, and this is why it's not crap. And then they went,
Yeah.
and eventually everyone can, yeah, it's not, is it? It's great. So, and that sort of boils down to the whole what it's all about, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking back to when we started. So obviously, it was myself, but there was like Leonie from the wine shop, Liz and Sophie from Bibelo, Julie from Coloco, and there was other people as well. But it was very much a case of wanting to do something. I think they got bored with the Chamber of Trade kind of approach as well, which was talking about almost unfixable problems like ring roads and parking and dog mess. And like I say, focusing on the positive kind of things. And I remember a lot of the early messaging was sort of, you know, the hidden gems and make little reviews of the shops. And did you know what was in your town? And have you explored your town? And it's all those kind of things that people bought into because it was something fresh. And they could see they were actually going to be doing something that probably had a bit of an action to it, as opposed to another meeting about the same 30-year-old problem. But it also just wrapped up a bit of the energy. I think Leek's always been a creative town. It's got roots going back to the arts and crafts, very musical town, and very friendly. I think we just sort of pulled a lot of that together, gave it a bit of an umbrella that got people working together. But again, it was that thing of doing it all together. If the town gets a bit busier, everyone will get their own reward from that. Whereas I think other approaches are very much, you know, it will be done for you, as you say, top down, and people just sit back and say, go on then, off you go. Oh, that didn't work. Whereas there's people that, well, they just got a vested interest in it working. It was simple, it was fun, and you started to see a change in people very quickly as well.
I think it, from my point of view, what I've learned of the past, I suppose, is there's a want from people that live, particularly now as well, that live in a place. There's a want for them to connect to where they live, but there doesn't seem to be that mechanism to connect the people that run the shops and the people that want to visit the shops. And that, I suppose, that's what this was about. It was giving tools rather than trying to fix big problems, like you say, like ring roads and things like that. It was going, actually, it's actually quite good already, but you don't know it. And
yeah.
So it's and you can have all the shops in the world trying to promote themselves, but that's never going to give a collaborative voice, and it's never going to, you're not going to go searching out 20 websites for shops before you go and decide where to go to spend your money. Whereas if there's 20 or 30 or 40 shops all on businesses saying, this is our town, this is great, come and have a look, people do, don't they? It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. And as you say, that sort of reputation grew that, a couple of years, say, over a couple of years, people became aware of Leek. So we hadn't changed an awful lot. I mean, the empty shop rate dropped from about 15% of the shops being empty to about 6% over a 3-year period. So obviously something was in the air that people were keen to be part of. But like you say, people from other towns were then saying, what's happening in Leek? And it was totally locally. The Foxlow Arts Centre opened at the same time. So that had a big impact because there wasn't really a town hall or a sort of social space for the town. So there's a couple of things happened at the same time, but it was very much just a case of, well, we're just the businesses being bothered, being interested, working together and having a good time doing it. And that's very much what other towns were sort of saying, well, what is it? And when you explain that, they either got it or they didn't.
Yeah.
And then we saw other towns would try it and it would last for 6 months or a year because they didn't realise what was involved, and others took it and flew with it.
I think for me that one of the key points that you said there was having a good time doing it, and that's the bit that tends to, if you don't have that element, it fails, doesn't it? And that's one of the big things I know about Leek, because I can honestly say I'm good friends with like a lot of people in Leek, and I turn up in Leek now, and you've got there's a group of people, but it's not exclusive, is it? It's just they got it and had fun with it. I think that's the bit that I really liked. They had fun with it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think as well when people, because we were having ideas. So I think I've seen, having worked on the national Totally Local as well, the core element, which is that first phase of getting people to back into the high street, shopping in town, and then there's sort of, it becomes I wouldn't say it feeds itself, but the enthusiasm is like, well, what else can we do? And I think different places see gaps. So what isn't in the town? What would we like? So, as you say, things like we started a Sunday market because
I want to go on to that actually, because I think that's really, really important, and I think that's probably a model for. Sorry for interrupting there, but it's such an important part of Leek's story, I think, because that is potentially a model for the rest of the country, because it's not. It came out of frustration almost, didn't it? Really, I suppose. I remember you tried to do a market and you couldn't get a license. So that's right, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, so the thinking behind it was that we'd moved the town forward. It was getting busier. Its reputation was growing. New shops were opening. People were working together. The location on the sort of edge of the Peak District, but tourism wasn't there. People would come into town on a Sunday and it was the odd cafe was open. It's sort of like tumbleweed town.
Yeah.
So although what I said earlier was it wasn't all about tourism, it's having something that had some pizzazz to it, something that was a bit people were proud of, and a bit different. So we looked at the idea of a Sunday market, because that was the day that needed fixing. And there are other big Sunday markets around. They tend to be set up so they just take over the town centre. There's no real consideration of the other businesses or the other shops. So what we came up with the idea of was recreating the street scene. So if a shop wants to open, no stalls go in front of the shop. If a shop's shut, you put a stall in front of it. So you almost make a new street. So people would mix going in the shops with going on the stalls. So it seemed pretty straightforward, but it had never been done on a Sunday. Like I say, talking to the council, and there's this archaic sort of thing with licensing markets. So, there's things like you have a charter market in a town and no other town within 6 miles can have a charter, or someone's got a license for a specific kind of market. So we weren't aware of any of that kind of thing. We just said, can we just do a Sunday market? And it ruffled a few feathers, but eventually a guy at the council said, I can see the potential, let's try it. And I think we started 9 stalls. But before that, because we couldn't get any stalls, we just opened one day. Shops just opened. So you couldn't have a stall, but if a shop had someone who was a maker, so we had Sarah Mayek Glass Design, who we stocked in the shop at the time. She just had a little trestle table outside. But if you bought anything, you bought it at the till in the shop, so it wasn't a market stall.
So
Uh,
that's how you got around the license thing, wasn't it?
yeah, and we did that once, 1 or 2 months, first Sunday of the month, and people came out. It
Mm.
was it was like, you could almost cry. It was like, is this going to work? And it did. So once we'd shown that there was a bit of room for it, then we got some leverage with the council. Um, because it was on a brand new thing, I think they just had to look at how they paid for the stalls to be put up and would the teams work on Sundays and all those kind of things. And it snowballed. So from, was it 2013, I think, 12,
You,
13.
you called
We
it the
now,
Sunday supplement, didn't you? That was the thing, which I love that. It was the
yeah,
Totally
well,
Locally Sunday supplement. Yeah.
that was Sarah's husband, Dean, came up with that. And I think it was a play on it being an extra day's trade, but also because we got the Totally Locally Times, the newspaper, this
Yeah.
was the colour supplement to the Times. I can't remember. But it went from 10, 14, 20 stalls. Now, pre-COVID,
Mm.
it was running at 80 stalls.
And,
So
and
we
they're
won an
all,
award for that.
and they're all
Um,
local. They're all local makers, and well, mainly makers, aren't they? It is makers, isn't it? More or
yeah,
less.
it's a food and drink and artisan market. So every trade is from a 30-mile radius. Nothing's bought in unless you are a shop from Leek who's on the periphery or just outside of the town. So you can have a stall on the market to promote your business. And through that, as it grew and it spread through the town, it shared that sort of extra Sunday trade with other shops. So they were all getting a bit of the trade. We get local buskers who play. And I say there's about 80 stalls. People have used it as a test bed, so they've had an idea, tried it on the market and other markets. I'm not saying we're exclusive, but quite a few people like Matt from Live Love Loaf started as a bakery. He's now got a bakery and a cafe in the town. Misco's Chocolates, Cisco and Meg. Again, they start on markets, moved on, and they've now got a shop in town. And there's loads of people who've used the market as a building block to create either an online business, or they've gone to open a shop, or it's become their permanent business. So from that respect, really proud of what it's achieved.
I think that.
And it's like a Saturday in town.
I think as well is we. I remember doing the original Sunday supplement thing that we did for the total, and I always remember the headline. It was a picture of Bud, wasn't it, holding a
It was
total,
Bud,
and
yeah,
it said "Leak opens on Sunday, shock."
yeah. No, I came across that the other day again. Yeah,
and it and
but
it it had that. It did shut down on Sundays, didn't it? The whole town just closed, and nothing was. There was nothing
there
open.
was there was the odd cafe,
Yeah, and now.
and I get it. And the reason it's only on one day a month as well was, a lot of small businesses are family run,
Mm.
and to open all Sundays takes a lot of time out of either their life or their family life. And we did trial like opening more Sundays, and it just didn't quite get the same
Mm.
traction. And I don't think it's a case of trying to fix everything. I think you fall into the 24/7. Oh, you must be open more.
Yeah.
I think there's finding a balance in it that it gives people time to shop at the weekend, and that one Sunday opens that up.
Mm.
A few shops were opening every Sunday. I think Pronto Belly, Be Calmed. So some people did take it on and say, actually, no, I'm going to be open every Sunday. But I think it has to work for the individual business as well. But what it really did show was that it's that one day a month where people will, even now we're sort of COVID lockdown, when's the market restarting? And people used to say, even though it's called Sunday supplement,
Mm.
like, oh, you're going down Totally Locally on Sunday. That's just what it became.
Totally Locally
Um,
is the name of the market in most people's head now, isn't it? It's
yeah,
gone from the
yeah,
company into the being the market. And I think as well, it's really interesting that whole thing about, I suppose if you're a town centre manager or whatever, you go, we need to drive it so that every Sunday is open, and we need to get more and more and more and more. And if you take it from, again, from a bottom up sort of idea, you go, well, actually, you know, we choose to run a business like this because this is what we choose. So to have the availability of one Sunday a month where you can open if you want to, and know that that's going to have a really good effect on your business, but still have those other three for your family time, is quite an interesting thing. And it, you know, I suppose after COVID as well, everyone's reassessing, aren't they? And reassessing that, how we feel, how is bigger better, is 24 hours better, all those things. You know, it's not as always as you expect, is it? I suppose that's the thing. It's not.
No, and
And solutions driven by the businesses themselves tend to be a bit more realistic and a bit more sustainable. That's my thinking on this anyway, is rather
yeah,
than, you know, a big
definitely.
consultancy company coming in and telling you what you should do. And, you know, and
Yeah,
everyone's different as well. That's the other thing.
that they are. And I think the other thing that we found from the Sunday market, like you say, there's a group of people who are doing extra sort of things, and the market became a bit of a sort of an anchor for other things to happen in town. So things that happen in Leek, or events that didn't happen. There's a Blues and Americana festival, and that's main weekend is the same weekend as the Sunday supplement. The Staffordshire Contemporary Artists and Designers Fair at the Foxlow. That's a Saturday, Sunday, so that has another 30 artists, makers. That coincides with the Sunday supplement. And then we've got this thing called Dr. Plots, which is based around children's workshops, but also for adults. And it's mainly themed around Leek's history or heritage. So every year, the Dr. Plots team pick a theme from Leek's history and do workshops on it. So we've done things like, what was it? The Horrible Hats of History. And they were basically make a cardboard hat.
Yeah.
But it was like Victorian stovepipes, or Leek had French prisoners of war in the Napoleonic War. So you could make those, but it was a reason why. So it was telling a story, and Leek's weaving history and heritage. So they made a massive human loom. So everyone joined in making this scarf. That happens every year as well. And they've got a parade with the characters from the poem Gawain and the Green Knight, which was locally based. So there's so many things that from Totally Locally, and then the Sunday supplement, and then it's fed into all these other activities that have added extra to the town. So it's, you know, it's way more than just the shopping as well. I think culturally and events and activities. And these are all people who are volunteering, who are sort of like, oh, I could do something, or I've got an idea. And it got to the point where you get asked, can we do this? So well, if there isn't something that says you can't, maybe you can.
It's really funny. It's like I've previously just been chatting to Emma from Crickhowl, and she was going, the one thing that we've loved is the fact that you don't need permission. And there's a tendency for people to wait or try and find how they get permission, and that, you know, that takes a lot of doing. And, you know, that thing of just going, actually, we can do it. And I was going to ask you, I suppose, is, you know, with Totally Locally, you could see that things were happening, and you could see that people were doing it, and that, I think, do you think it gives like more confidence for people to then go and say, well, I can do this then, or I can do that? Or, I mean, there's a key group of you, isn't there? But that group seems to have expanded quite a lot, and it's the same people seem to be involved in all the things, isn't it? But then those grow as well, don't they? So they.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got people like Dave Swarbrook, Chris Thompson. Okay, you start naming names and you forget people. I always try and resist that. John Green, Sarah Williscroft, you know, and the shopkeepers themselves. But yeah, it's very much a case of, let's say, it's confidence inspiring. And I think once you've done a few things, you can just give people a little bit of a guide of basics that they might need, and it saves them having to sort of discover everything that we had to discover or understand.
Yeah.
And once you've got that sort of structure, and I think there's certain things that everything has in common. It's small groups, it's enthusiasm. Generally, it's very light on anything even resembling a committee, or it's sort of kept behind the scenes, and go with people's ideas, go with other people's input. And that seems to be the sort of nurturing thing. And then you've got people just wanting to do things and join in with it, really. But I mean, equally, there came a point because we started, I won't say getting too big for our books, but we're doing so many more things. And I used to go to towns and think, oh, I wish we had one of these or one of those. So we did a food and drink festival. I mean, that came off the back of organising the Sunday supplement market, which was from an approach from the council. And we did that for 3-4 years. But we couldn't get anyone who would organise a park and ride. Just couldn't get it to happen. So it basically gridlocked the town. It became too successful for itself. We did the Cock and Buck story for a few years when Wetherspoon's pub opened.
Yeah.
And that was the unique thing where we got two pubs on the high street opposite each other who actually put an event on between them. So I think the very first one, they both had a beer garden and they had a schedule of acts and they alternated. So you'd have an act on in the Roebuck, then the next act was over the road at the Cock Inn, which again, at the time, we were like, who can imagine a pub promoting their competitor over the road in theory?
And they swapped right, didn't they, as well?
Go and have a drink over there.
Yeah.
And it was a great success, a nightmare for the pubs at the end of the night because they had to try and sort out what basically beer glasses were appearing from each pub in the other one. So they had to sort of do a glass exchange. And Nick, who was the manager at the Roebuck, said it'd be great if this was in the street. And because of the experience we got of organising the food and drink festival and the Sunday supplement, we knew how to put an event on in the street. So that tied in with the Sunday supplement when that was a bit smaller. And as the Sunday supplement grew, the Leek Fest sort of thing was too big to put them all both on together. So again, we did that for a few years. And I think that's the thing. It's
if you explain the Cock Inn and the Roebuck, they're across the road from each other, aren't they? So normally that would be rival pubs, wouldn't it? And the fact is they put a music event on between them. And the idea of going, right, the band's over there now, and then, right, it's back over here again. And that whole, and seeing, that's the bit I really loved. And I think, I suppose as well is the other thing on the Roebuck, I suppose, is the Totally Locally Burger, which has had, which we got on BBC News and BBC Breakfast. So the whole, you can, if you,
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to finish saying that the thing about something like Leek Fest, where the pubs were putting their bands on and then alternating, continues sort of with the Blues and Americana Festival, and that the pubs understand if there's music all through the town, they'll all benefit. So, it must be a massive headache for the organisers getting the schedule right so you can choose to go in different places. But again, it's not a festival that's in a marquee on the edge of town, which will be very easy to organise. It is all the pubs in Leek have live music on for 3 or 4 days. So again, you haven't got pubs saying, "Oh, I'm not joining in because I'm not going to get any trade because he's got these bands." They're all like, "Yeah, let's join in and let's all have a slice of the pie." And I think that's the thing that we've got with Totally Locally. It's that people aren't seeing everyone else as competitors. They very much will join in and work together. And that comes on to the Totally Locally Burger, or the Tolo Burger that I'm not meant to call it anymore. But that came out of, so if you say that the original Cock and Buck story was a response to a Wetherspoons opening, and again, it's this thing of rather than complaining about stuff and moaning, it's just put something on, and people might not even realise why it's on, but it draws them to see the good quality pubs in town or the good quality cafes, And the Totally Locally Burger came out of the Fiver Fest. So the Roebuck did a burger, and it was about £7-8. And just chatting with Nick, it just turned out that all the ingredients were actually all from the high street.
Yeah.
So we was getting the bread from Live Love Loaf, who was the baker who started on the market. The minced meat was from Meekins Butchers just down the road. We were getting the groceries from Harrison's Greengrocers in town. So everything was within 100 square meters, 100 square yards of the pub.
Yeah.
So they did it as a fiver special for the Fiver Fest, called it the Totally Locally Burger. And then it became the best selling thing on the menu.
And it,
So now they can't stop
and it's
selling the
well, the
Totally
Roebuck,
Locally Burger.
well, the Roebuck always had the £5 message on their blackboard, didn't they? Right from day one. And I thought
Yes.
that was a really, for me, that was such a lovely thing to see. So when they actually did the burger, I thought it's just genius, really. And
Yeah.
the story, the fact is, so when BBC came out to film it, and it was one of the nicest things I've seen. And is it Dave from Meekins Butchers? Is it
Ian.
yeah?
Well, it's two brothers, Ian and Rob. Yeah.
Rob, sorry, yeah. So Rob from Meekins Butchers, and he came in to and for the interview. So the BBC interviewed us all sat around eating the burger and talking about the £5, um, and he went to the bar and they said, "Oh, we owe you for the meat." So he gave him a £20 note, and he paused for about 2 seconds and he went, "I'll have a pint, please," and gave the £20 note back.
Yeah.
And that for me is like, I just thought there is the whole concept of Totally Locally in one transaction, is the fact that that money goes round and round and round and round. They buy from him, he buys from them, and it's straight back
Yeah.
into the till again. And it almost like it didn't need the transaction in a way, but
Mm.
you can and again multiply it by 100 times, and all of a sudden things change, don't they? But
Yeah.
it was a lovely moment there, I thought.
I mean, it brings us to the present day. Just talking to people recently, and obviously, the high street recovery and reopening, and all the other bits. And we said how noticeable it is now, how people's language has changed, or what they talk about. So, for example, there's loads of Facebook groups in town, and they're promoting the high street reopening, or they're talking about the local shops, and you see people saying, let's support our local shops, or it's almost like they now understand the impact of shopping with their local independents rather than complaining. And there's still a bit of, there isn't a name any high street brand and someone say, well, we haven't got one of those. But it's definitely embedded itself that people are aware of their choices and where they shop and how it supports the town. And it's just quite heartwarming because you see people physically doing what they say they're going to do. Like you say, it's going to the pub, buying the drink with the money for the order, or people consciously talking it up, saying, let's be proud of our town. So that 10-year period, when you look at what Totally Locally was talking about, has now become the sort of commonplace language. And it's you could almost say that's its job. If there was anything to say that's the job done, was beyond the market, beyond the sort of marketing campaigns and the Fiver Fest and all the other stuff. It's now just second nature for people.
I've said this before, and for me it doesn't matter that if Totally Locally dies in a town, it doesn't matter, because it matters not to me at all. It's nice to still see it, but if it goes away, as long as it started, even if it started a conversation, and this is what I was saying with Emma the other day, or if it started people changing the way that they think, that alone's enough. And if it moves on to something else, which is great, but and like in certain places, Fiver Fest is just huge, but the rest of it doesn't. So certain places that Fiver Fest is just become a massive thing, and I suppose it's just tools, isn't it? It's just tools for people to pick. It's a toolbox that you can pick out. You can have use all the tools, or you can just use the odd bit here and there. And
I
yeah,
remember we had the conversation when we'd done the first, I suppose, plan or whatever. It's like 2 or 3 years. It's like, what do we do now? We've done everything. So we'd gone through some Fiver Fests. We'd done some events. There was the Did You Know poster that had come from Teddington.
yeah, from Simon. Yeah.
And then there was little bag stuffers that were done, the little bookmarks and stuff. So there
Imagine.
was loads of little bits of things changing. But it was like, well, what do we do now? So, oh, should we do it all again? So we
Yeah,
got everything reprinted with, newer photos and newer businesses listed. So yeah, you sort of like you go through the cycle, and then eventually, now we've got there. And it's great when new things like, the National Fibre Fest comes out rather than being isolated and you join in with it. But that's the bit for me that sums it up when you see people just talking about supporting their shops. And I think back to the early days of Totally Locally, people would walk into the shop we had then saying, I've come to spend my fiver, or I've only spent £4.49, is that enough?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I suppose it's a journey. It's like anything like this is a journey for the town, isn't it? So it's you starting here, whatever base that could be, and like I suppose now it's pushing at an open door, isn't it? Really, whereas 10 years ago it wasn't. It
Mm,
was, I think you came to me because a massive Sainsbury's was opening, wasn't it? And
yeah,
and there was a
yeah,
fear, wasn't there? And now that massive Sainsbury's is not that, it's massive Amazon, isn't it? And that's the fear.
yeah,
There's always I suppose it's like anything, isn't it? There's always a worry that something's going to impact. But it was originally, it was a big Sainsbury's opening up on the edge of town, and people got worried, and that made people take action. And it's a shame in some ways that it needs a threat to make that people come together. But in a way, I think it does motivate people, doesn't it? And it does
yeah.
activate people. And I think that
Yeah, yeah. It's something to, like you say, to pull people together to get them going. And you're right, it's a shame. But I think what we've also, well, we've mentioned the Weatherspoons opening, the various other things, was not focusing on what the perceived threat is,
mm,
but just to promote what you have already,
yeah,
so that you're not sort of saying don't go to Sainsbury's.
mm,
It's more, but did you know what's in town? I mean, Leek had a Waitrose that opened, and then it closed within about 3 years, and everyone was really surprised about. Well, first of all, that it was opening because it was probably one of the northernmost branches of Waitrose, I think. But then when it shut, and the staff were saying, "Well, we were hitting all our targets. We were doing everything we needed to do." No one ever really got to the bottom of it. And I remember talking to, I think it was Radio Stoke.
mm,
I said, well, all the things that a supermarket like Waitrose brings to a town, which is like, your more varied delicatessen kind of offers, or the wine, the drinks, the butcher, the grocer. Leek had all those still. I mean,
yeah,
I think there's 3 or 4 butchers in Leek,
mm,
and there's 2 traditional greengrocers, and there's a third one comes on the market. There's a baker now, and maybe the whole thing of somewhere like Waitrose was people like, yeah, but we've already got the nice quality treat kind of level food,
yeah,
so we don't go to Waitrose. So it may be that it's sort of the threat isn't always what you think it is, and to say that a supermarket closed, well, you wouldn't boast about it.
no,
Um, you could say, well, is it the strength of the independent shops that contribute to that?
yeah.
So yeah, something like the Sainsbury's that opened didn't have the impact that it was perceived that it could have had. But we've also got those traditional food shops that people can shop with.
It's a
I
very
think,
it's a very walkable town as well, isn't it? I think perceived wisdom at them, and rightly so, perceived wisdom, and particularly when you start looking to America and Australia and all the places that walkable cities, and Europe as well, particularly Scandi countries,
mm,
that walkable cities are sustainable cities. Whereas we're still a lot of towns and cities are very in the mindset of car is king. We need more parking. We need more parking. Whereas Leek has its parking, but you can get out and you can more or less walk and get all the stuff in a very small area in a safe. You don't have to cross big roads, do you, and stuff like that. And I think
no,
by design,
no,
purely maybe that's just something I've spotted as an outsider, but it you can get around very, very
mm,
quickly, very easily.
yeah, you're right. I mean, it is. an easily walkable town. The other thing, a lot of people in the town will sometimes say, it's a compact town, but it can take you a long time to get across town because you're just seeing so many people that you're seeing friends and just having, well, in the old days, um, just having a chat in the street, So sometimes me going out and saying I'll meet somebody in half an hour, I'm more often not apologising I'm late because I'd seen two other people on the way through. But yeah, the car thing, it's still a rural town. A lot of people do need to drive to get there. And I think one of the other challenges as well is just that because people are used to just pulling up where they want to and getting out and doing a little bit of a shop, by saying that there's so much more in town, maybe people are actually driving in and staying longer because they're more aware of what's there. And those are the sort of trails that totally locally inspired. The town does an Easter egg trail. They do a bat hunt, which has become almost like a safe alternative to trick or treating.
Yeah.
So the classic totally locally map, which Chris Thompson did for us and donated the artwork.
It's still going 10 years.
Still going, and the
artwork.
actual town map has about 80 businesses on there. So that's always reprinted every year. It's a massive chore for the volunteers who organise it. But that's a big thing of, again, what Totally Locally's brought. But with the trails, it was split the time up into little sections. So, you've got to go to each part of the map and spot either the Easter egg or the bat. The shop gives you a reward. And then when you've completed the whole map, you go and get yourself a little goodie bag, or the kids do. So those sort of trails started off just getting people to be a bit more aware of what was in the other shops or to get out of their normal pattern. And again, you say, because it's quite an easy town to navigate, the kids could do it in a morning. And then people would say, I've not been in this shop before, and, I might be back or I will be back. And then we found that kids started wearing fancy dress, and then it became a bit of a town-wide activity. So like I say, for the Halloween trail, which is the weekend closest to Halloween, you've got all the kids, toddlers out in their Halloween outfits, going around the shops, spotting the bats, collecting them out. And it's become, in the space of 4 or 5 years, a highlight event for the town. But it all came back from the original thing of doing a map, which I think we did for the first market or launch day, just to make people aware of what the shops were that were in town.
And it's amazing, isn't it, that, and again, coming back to that whole, I always end my presentations with Dr. Seuss from the Lorax, and it says, if nobody cares, I can't paraphrase it, but if nobody cares, if somebody doesn't do it, it's got to be you, basically. And it comes down to what we always, that phrase, you are the they, and the they should do something about it. Whereas the traditional way will be go, why isn't the bid doing a trail? Why isn't the council putting a trail on? And like you just went, well, we've done a map, so we'll just change it. We'll change the front and put a trail on it, and everyone dips in the pocket and everyone clubs together, and then we do a map. And nobody, I bet in a million years, no one asked permission to do it, did they? You just went and did it. And
no, again, it was a couple of shopkeepers had the idea, and it was like, if you want to try it, take it forward. We also were doing we did a Great British Bake Off, same concept. So that was cafes in the food and drink festival. They do their signature dish, and then people would go around the cafes and taste them and rank them. And then we had so it was like a Great British Bake Off, but it was a walking trail. It's simple things, but it just gets people going around. They probably don't even realise that they're being sort of introduced to new shops by doing it. Sometimes it's very subtle.
I thought you were going to say they don't realise being manipulated.
No, we don't manipulate people, do we? They choose.
Marketing
by their behaviour.
Marketing by stealth and joining in, I suppose. Yeah, and ownership. The one thing I really feel like this and Leek and almost all the towns where this is really successful is it's about ownership, isn't it? So it's ownership of the campaign, and the need to do something is owned by the businesses and the volunteers. And the ownership of the town is by the shoppers and the people that live there. And if you give that ownership, it tends to work. And whereas if someone is stood there going, no, you can't get involved in this because I'm in charge of that, it doesn't work, or it'll work for a little bit and then die. So this idea of it's your town, crack on, is and it's your town, it's your responsibility to look after it by just by turning up and using the shops. It's not rocket science, is it?
No, it's and I know we've had this conversation before when people do users or losers or save our shops. It's like, well, I'm not using you now, so why would I want to save you if I don't use you? So I think, it's just people have just realised what was there, what is there. That's the simplest thing. Just like people are just blindfolded to what's in their own locality. Almost like you say, they've had years of being told that there's no choice or the high street's dead, so we better go to the supermarket or we better go online. And it's the reverse of that. Once you actually get people to explore the high street, you can't tell them. You just got to draw them in. I think that's the key thing, which is getting people to come and find out for themselves. Once they've done that,
and it's
the habits form.
It's really funny, isn't it? Because if you really think about it, big business, dominate, and the huge international businesses and multinational businesses, they dominate, and their narrative is the high street is dying. The high street is dying, and at the moment, I don't think the full effect of COVID is going to. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? There's been huge shift towards local, but for some people that's been too late. So we're coming out of it. But the one thing that's really made me sort of think actually it's going to be okay is that barriers have dropped, and I'm working with my local council at the moment, and the new attitude is let's just try things, which is really interesting. Stuff that we were doing 10 years ago has now become, well, we've got a master plan for the town that's going to take 5 years before that happens, but we need something to happen next week or next month. And again, not having to ask permission, coming up with an idea and just doing it is going to save our towns in lots of ways. You need both. I think towns have changed, and the people's needs have changed, but the narrative has always been, that narrative of save our shops. Like for me, if you go save our shops, users or losers, I'm going, well, you mustn't be very good then if you must be going under. So what's the point? I'll wait for your sale. So, and this whole actually, be proud of where you live, and when you use your shops, the place gets better and more shops come. People get it. There's still plenty of people that think that the answer to it all is Primark, getting a Primark in your town. I have no idea why, but again, there's a place for that too. There's a place for everything.
I've always said when people talk about we've even got a Facebook group called What Leek Really Needs, but it's a parody. It's not the Primark or the that kind of thing.
I remember.
But I think that there's an element that I always said, play to your strengths. So if you're a market town, Leek is a market town. It's got a high number of independent shops. It's got a small number of chains. But be good at what you do rather than trying to be pretty poor at being like a smaller city type of town. And I think we've seen that when, obviously the closing of businesses through the COVID pandemic, but the chains that have shut, so the Edinburgh Woolen Mill, Peacocks, Pond and Mill, Bon Marsh, etc. If those shops were opening in a town, they'd be, we really care about your town and we're going to create all these jobs. And, there's an awful lot of almost like, you are our store or we are your store. But as soon as the figures don't stack up, they just go. But like you say, people still say, but, to be great if there was a Marks and Spencer's Simply Food or a Primark or a Next, or there's nothing for kids' clothing, there's nothing for this. But when you look at the reality of every major retailer is retracting, and they're probably going to be even more focused online.
Mm.
But also, even if you did get one of those stores, it'd be a shadow of what you are used to doing when you go to the city.
Mm.
You know, you take a Primark, and what are they, 2 or 3 story, however many thousand
Yeah,
square meters?
and they're not going to go
Well,
into
you're
the
never going to
whole.
get.
No.
And even if you did have one in a town, it'd be a few hundred square meters. So I think it's almost like throwaway comments of, "Oh, that will fix everything."
Mm.
Whereas I think I think back to my childhood, that your town centre was your core shopping.
Mm.
And then going to the city was like the big treats kind of thing. So when you need to go and do clothes shopping or
Yeah.
some bigger thing, you went to the city.
Mm.
And then it diluted that, well, if it's good to have a Curry's here and let's put them all in all the other towns.
Yeah.
And how long did that last for? 5, 10 years?
I
And
think,
they realised that it didn't work, and then everything retracted again.
and I think,
Uh,
and it carries on now. There's a balance. Most people use Amazon. I don't, but most people do. I do it as almost like a gesture. I will not go there, but people use Amazon. But if they're using Amazon and still using the local cafe, the local greengrocer, it doesn't matter. It's
I think
you
for
know,
me, I do use Amazon for some things, and it's normally something that I can't get anywhere else.
yeah, yeah. That's basically,
Um,
and
but
that's what
when,
try your town first.
yeah, yeah,
And look online if you can. That's one of the things is look online first, which is bad in some ways because as we know, lots of local shops don't have an online presence. And I keep banging on about this. You need to have your products online, even if you don't sell them online, because people need to find them. But anyway,
yeah,
yeah, that's another.
yeah. But I think it is, like you say, it's what the town can offer, and there's certain things that something online can never
Mm.
replace. They just can't. They can't do it. Um, but equally, like I said, I mean, I remember years back in the very early days, one of the shops in Leek put something on Facebook saying, "Oh, starting my Christmas shopping on Amazon." Boom. And I remember the book shop saying, "Well, I'm not going to shop with them then."
Yeah,
It's little knock-on effects. So the shops were all saying, "Come and shop with me,"
yeah.
but then weren't. I think it was just getting in the hang of it, and like you say, then that actually became that the shops all did start shopping with each other, and and I know there's certain things like with cafes that when they're running out of sugar sticks,
Mm.
they'll ring each other up and have you got, can I borrow some off you, or I'll get you a box when I go to the wholesaler, and just using local accountants and using local services. So it shows how things change again, how people understand the impact they can have.
I do
Um,
remember right at the beginning. It was really interesting. Right at the beginning, one of the shops, and I'm not sure if it was Biblo or not, and they said it's really funny because I used to pop by the supermarket to get my milk and my paper or whatever, or milk and whatever every day. And then when totally, okay, why am I doing that? Why don't I get it from the I think it's Home and
Yeah,
Court.
I can remember. I can't remember who it was, but it was, yeah. They went to Breckles.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
They went to Breckles to get their milk and
And
stuff.
and it said it's just because in my mind that's what you did. You went to the supermarket for that, and so just that one change, and then obviously then you're starting to use, and then when you start shifting that little shift starts to create a
Yeah,
habit. Yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, it just popped into my mind. That was like one of my
mm,
favorite things at the time. It was like, so you've created that one thing, and then that shop owner then would probably go, oh, where's your shop? Oh, I didn't know about that one. I'll pop in.
yeah.
And
I
I
mean,
always say it's
it's
like you've got to put your money where your mouth is, because like you say, if your bookshop says shop with me but then doesn't, sorry, if your butcher says shop with me but I buy my books on Amazon, the bookshop's not going to go, well, I'll come and buy from you then, are they?
exactly.
you know
Yeah,
and
I mean, there's just so many things talking to you through this of little things that have happened, very small things, but they're not insignificant. But it's
mm,
just almost like the little milestones all the way along the years, the journey, should we say,
yeah,
of
been a long.
bits that have changed and how, as I say again, it becomes second nature. It becomes how people act and talk. you don't even think to pick up on it now. But in the early days, certain things just stood out.
Mm.
It was just,
Yeah.
like you say, you will, oh wow,
Yeah.
or just like a bit emotional about some of the things as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like you say, and Leek is now a very, very great place to live, isn't it? And people move there specifically because it's got this whole thing going on, hasn't it? And
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of people who'd moved their business or opening businesses who were choosing to use Leek. People were moving. I mean, it got listed. Just trying to think of the things that have raised its profile. So the Sunday Supplement won the Towns Alive award. The Telegraph's first High Street of the Year, Leek was the runner-up. Can't remember who won. It doesn't matter. But we were runner-up in that.
Fixed.
Yeah. And then it was featured in a couple of the Let's Move To features in the Sunday papers.
And all of
it's just grown. It's just,
and that was quite inconceivable at the time, 10 years ago, wasn't it? By most people there, yeah. So that's fascinating.
But yeah, you still hear people, so I suppose 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, people would be saying, they talk to you, and I don't have a shop now, but when you did, people would come and talk about what a great place it was, which is partly what started it all. They'd like, well, why didn't I know about this place? Why have we just stumbled across it? But equally, people were starting to move, and they were choosing, and you'd hear people say, oh, I had a short list of 2 or 3 towns, like it might have been a Richmond and Leek and somewhere else. And again, you were like, we're quite honoured that we were on that short list.
Amazing.
And it's an unspoilt market town, lots of independent shops, a very vibrant sort of cultural scene. So I say, music, arts, and the pubs as well. I mean, I know not everyone wants to go to a pub, but Leek's one of the few towns where the number of pubs was growing. They were opening up rather than closing down. And like we mentioned, the Cock and the Roebuck earlier, they both had very significant refurbs a few years ago. A lot of the sort of craft ale kind of places were opening up. Cafes slowly changed from being tea rooms to cafes. Little things over the years. And more restaurants opened. So, 10 years ago, there was an Italian restaurant in Leek, Primo Piano, a couple of curry houses, a Chinese, and I think Raimondo's, which did sort of steaks and stuff. That was about it. And now you've got places like Napoli, which is a really great bohemian sort of pizza place. The Foxlow's Cafe. You've got loads of different places. The Roebuck does food. Alberto's opened. The Old Mill, and even places like the Old Mill, when they were doing the press release, in their planning statement, they actually said that we want to operate as a totally locally business, sourcing products locally. That was another thing that stood out. It's reading someone's planning application in paper, talking about being a totally locally venue.
Wow.
So yeah, the town's really changed. And I was having this conversation the other day, how much of it is down to Totally Locally, the people involved with Totally Locally, and how much would have happened anyway, and we'll never know.
No.
But by and large, I think a lot of people seem to think that it's Totally Locally has been responsible for an awful lot that's happened in Leek. And that's thanks to you as well for gifting it.
Well, no, I suppose, yeah, well, thank you, but I found that out, but it's I suppose it's tools, isn't it? And you had the right mechanics in a way. That's the way I look at it. The tools are there. But yeah, so that's a lovely way to end it, actually. So I think because we'll start boring people now if we're not careful. We can rabbit on for ages.
Oh God, yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to coming back over to Leek now that we can do that, and we'll just and go and see Alan and in the Cock again and stuff.
Yeah, all those things we've all missed.
And
I mean,
Dave
last Wednesday, yesterday, but it was the first time this year, 2021, if anyone's watching this in the future, where the relaxations had eased, and it was market day in Leek, and it was just so nice to see the shops open. The town centre's main market was on. A few of the pubs and cafes, not all of them. It helped that it was sunny, but you just got people back out enjoying the town safely as well. And I know a lot of people have felt very emotional about that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. It's special, isn't it? And I think no one's going to get emotional about Primark, are they? I'm not saying singling out Primark. No one's going to get emotional about that, but emotional to see the people that of our communities. It's a lovely thing to see, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, we'll
right.
leave it
Leave
there.
it there.
And thank you very much for chatting and spending that time. It's amazing, and it's just lovely to
Welcome.
catch up again. And yeah, so Totally Locally Leek, and the Sunday supplement is going strong every fourth
The
Sunday.
first Sunday of the month. I think the plan is to restart it July this year when all the national restrictions are lifted. Although it's classed as a market, it's so busy for the organisers. I think they're just looking at it saying that they want to make sure that it's absolutely safe. So hopefully from July,
And
first Sunday in July.
it's so worth a visit. It's so worth a visit, and the town's beautiful. But when the market's on, it's just got a vibe that's just it could be any European city in the world, couldn't it? Really, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
especially when the sun's shining.
yeah, often not.
No, not when it's bleak.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.